July 2007. A family smiles before the welcome sign to Bonito, Mato Grosso do Sul. A disposable camera clicks for the last time. 5 years later, in a forgotten subterranean section of the Blue Lake Grotto, 4 blue barrels emerge from the silence. They are chained and stained, guarding secrets no one was ever meant to find. What happened on that road between Campo Grande and the ecotourism paradise was never forgotten, only buried. Roberto Silva adjusted the rearview mirror and checked the fuel gauge one more time. It was 6 in the morning on a July Monday, and Campo Grande was still yawning under a gray winter sky. For the third time, Marina organized the documents in her translucent plastic folder, separating the vouchers for the Blue Lake Grotto, the snorkeling trip on the Sucuri River, and the confirmation from the inn. This was how she did things. Everything organized, everything planned, nothing left to chance. "Dad, how long until we get to Bonito?" asked Lucas from the back seat, fiddling with the disposable camera he'd been given, especially for the trip. At 12, he was more interested in photographing the colorful fish on the snorkeling tour than the grotto's limestone formations. Carla beside him was scribbling a list in a notebook. "Blue Lake Grotto, take lots of pictures, snorkeling, don't forget sunscreen, buy souvenirs for my friends." Roberto smiled into the mirror. "About 3.5 hours, 4 at the most. We'll just stop for gas on the way out of the city." 35 years with the federal revenue had given him the precision of a stopwatch. Leave at 6:30, arrive before lunch. Plenty of time to settle into the inn and eat before their tour, scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at the Blue Lake Grotto. Marina closed the folder and placed it in the glove compartment. "I called again yesterday to confirm. The lady at the inn said our room is reserved and that they serve a very good breakfast, and the agency confirmed our times. The grotto today at 2, snorkeling tomorrow at 8. She had been a primary school teacher for 40 years and maintained the same meticulous organization she used to plan her lessons. The silver sedan glided through the still empty streets of Campo Grande. Roberto had bought the car 2 years earlier, a reliable model that had already taken them to Corumbá, Aquidauana, and other towns in the interior without a single problem. Full tank, tires inflated, everything checked, he murmured to himself. It was a ritual he followed religiously before any trip. Carla looked out the window and saw the first shops opening, the first workers at the bus stops. At 15, she was in that phase where anything outside the school routine felt like an adventure. "Mom, do you think we'll see golden fish when we go snorkeling?" Marina laughed. "I don't know, honey, but I'm sure it will be beautiful." The gas station on the edge of town was busy even at this hour. Roberto pulled up to a pump and got out to fill the tank. The attendant, a young man in a blue uniform, greeted him politely and began, "Traveling early, Mr. Roberto?" "To Bonito, family vacation." The man nodded in approval. "Beautiful place? First time?" "First time." Marina got out to use the restroom and buy some water. Inside the convenience store, she picked out 2 cold bottles and some cookies for the road. The cashier, a middle-aged woman, commented on the cloudy weather. "It might rain this afternoon, better to get to your destination soon." Marina nodded and put the change in her wallet. Back in the car, Roberto mentally reviewed the route one last time. BR 060 to Sidrolandia. Then continue on the same highway to Guia Lopes da Laguna, and finally take MS 178 to Bonito. A simple, uncomplicated route on roads he knew well. The GPS on his phone showed a travel time of 3 hours and 45 minutes. Lucas had already taken 2 pictures with the disposable camera before they had even left Campo Grande. "Save some film for what matters, Lucas," Marina advised, but without any real sternness. This was a family trip, a rare moment when they were all free from the pressures of work and school. Roberto had taken a week off. Marina had passed her private tutoring sessions to other teachers, and the children were on their school holidays. The silver sedan pulled away from the gas station at 6:35 a.m. Through the window, Campo Grande receded, its wide avenues and low buildings giving way to the vast Cerrado savanna that stretched to the horizon. Roberto tuned the radio to a sertaneja country music station. Marina adjusted her neck pillow. Carla went back to scribbling in her notebook. And Lucas watched the landscape change. It was an ordinary Monday in July of 2007. An ordinary family setting out on a 3-day trip to one of Mato Grosso do Sul's most famous tourist destinations. Nothing indicated that this morning would be the last time anyone would see them alive. Nothing suggested the silver sedan would become an obsession for dozens of people over the next 5 years. Nothing foretold that those neatly organized vouchers in the translucent plastic folder would be found, damp and decayed, in a subterranean area that not even the staff of the Blue Lake Grotto knew existed. The BR-060 stretched out straight and monotonous, under a sky growing heavier by the minute. Roberto kept the car at a steady 90 kilometers per hour, observing the speed limits with the discipline of a man who had never received a traffic ticket. Marina dozed in the passenger seat, lulled by the soft hum of the engine and the low murmur of the radio. In the back, Lucas had given up on the window and was now flipping through a comic book, while Carla continued to add to her list of tourist activities. "Dad, are we almost there?" Lucas asked, looking up from his comic. Roberto glanced at the dashboard clock. 8:15 a.m. "We're getting close to Sidrolandia. After that, it's a straight shot to Guia Lopez, and then we take the road to Bonito." The town appeared on the horizon, small and quiet, with the low houses and wide streets typical of the region. They passed through Sidrolandia without stopping. Roberto waved to a few pedestrians on the main street, a habit he'd had since he was young. Always greet people in small towns. Marina opened her eyes as they went over a speed bump at the town's entrance. "Are we past Sidrolandia already?" she asked, still sleepy. "Just past it. You slept well." She smiled and shifted in her seat. The Cerrado closed in on both sides of the highway, its green intense despite the dry season. Carla pointed to a group of rheas grazing a few hundred meters from the road. "Look, Mom! Rheas!" Marina followed her daughter's finger and smiled. "They're beautiful." "Lucas, why don't you take a picture?" But by the time Lucas raised the disposable camera, the birds had already moved behind a thicket of peaky trees. If you are enjoying this investigation into the disappearance of the Silva family, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. We have other real and mysterious cases that will hold your attention until the very end. The clouds grew denser as they drove south. Roberto turned on the windshield wipers as the first few drops began to spatter the glass. "Looks like it might really rain," he commented, remembering the cashier's forecast. Marina opened her plastic folder and checked the vouchers again. The woman at the agency said that if it rains too much, they'll reschedule the grotto tour for another time. It's not a problem. Lucas started asking questions about the Blue Lake Grotto. "Dad, is it true the water is really blue?" Roberto chuckled. "That's what they say. It has to do with the minerals in the water and the way the light enters the cave. You'll see." Carla added another item to her list. "Ask the guide why the water is blue." She wanted to understand everything, to write it all down, to remember every detail to tell her friends back at school. The weather gradually worsened. By 9:30, a light but steady rain was falling. Roberto slowed to 80 kilometers per hour and turned on the headlights. The road was still good, the asphalt in decent condition, but rain always demanded more caution. "Better to arrive safely than to arrive quickly," he always said. a philosophy he applied to both driving and life. Marina took out her cell phone to check for messages. Nothing. She tried calling the inn, but the call wouldn't connect. "It must be the weather," Roberto explained. "The signal will get better as we get closer to Bonito." She turned the phone off and put it back in her purse, but not before checking that it had enough battery. Carla noticed a change in the landscape. The Cerrado was giving way to wetter areas with denser vegetation and taller trees. "Are we getting near the mountains?" she asked. Roberto nodded. "The Bonito region is in a transitional zone. There's more water, more forest. That's why it's so beautiful for tourism." Lucas put his comic book away and turned his attention back to the window. At 10 o'clock sharp, they passed a sign indicating Guia Lopes da Laguna was 20 kilometers away. The rain had eased, but the sky remained heavy with low clouds that seemed to touch the tops of the tallest trees. Roberto started paying closer attention to the road signs. "We have to take the exit for Bonito soon." Marina unwrapped the cookies she had bought at the gas station and offered them around. "Eat something. We won't have lunch until after we arrive." Lucas took two and went back to fiddling with his camera, checking how many shots he had left. Carla nibbled on a cookie while adding more items to her list. Buy a postcard, try the pintado fish, take a family picture at the grotto entrance. The road curved gently to the left, and in the distance, Roberto could see the first hills that signaled their approach to the Bonito mountain region. His phone's GPS still showed an hour and 15 minutes to go. "Everything is going according to plan," he thought, satisfied with the punctuality that had always defined him. The rain returned with greater intensity as they passed through Guia Lopes da Laguna. Roberto waved at the highway patrol officer stationed at the town entrance, a burly man who raised a hand in return. The small town seemed even quieter under the rain, with few people on the streets and the main shops closed. Monday mornings in the interior always had this slower rhythm. "Now we just follow this to MS 178, Roberto said, reading the signs. Marina once again opened the plastic folder and took out the paper with the directions she had jotted down when she'd called the inn. "The lady said to follow MS 178 until we see the welcome sign for Bonito. After that, it's only another 15 kilometers to the town center." Lucas yawned and settled more comfortably in his seat. The trip was longer than he had expected. The turnoff for MS 178 appeared exactly where it was supposed to. Roberto made the turn carefully, slowing down because of the rain slicking the asphalt. The road was narrower than the BR 060, but well maintained, snaking between hills covered in a denser forest. Carla noticed the change in vegetation immediately. "Dad, the trees are different here." "It's the transitional forest, more humid, greener. We're entering the region of grottos and waterfalls." Marina tried calling the inn again, this time successfully. "Good morning, this is Marina Silva. We have a reservation for today." The voice on the other end was pleasant, female. "Yes, Mrs. Marina, everything is confirmed. What time are you expecting to arrive?" Marina looked at the clock. 10:45. "I think we'll be there before noon." "Perfect, the room is ready and lunch will be served until 2. Lucas had fallen asleep, his head resting against the window. Carla was still awake, watching the landscape gradually transform. The hills became more pronounced, covered in lush vegetation that contrasted with the savanna they had left behind. Occasionally, she could see small waterfalls cascading down rocky slopes fed by the constant rain. Roberto drove with concentration, alert to the sharper curves and the stretches where water pooled on the asphalt. He had enough experience to know that driving in the rain required patience and prudence. The silver sedan handled well. The tires had good grip, and he kept a safe distance from the few other vehicles he encountered. What time is our tour at the grotto? Marina asked, putting her phone away after ending the call. 2 o'clock, Roberto replied. We have plenty of time to get there, check in, have a calm lunch, and even rest a little before the tour. Carla mentally added another item to her list. Rest before the grotto so I'm not tired for the pictures. The rain eased up again, but the sky remained overcast with heavy clouds that promised more precipitation throughout the day. Roberto tuned the radio to a local station playing sertaneja music, interspersed with weather updates. Scattered showers this afternoon and evening, the announcer said. Temperatures between 16 and 22 degrees. Carla saw the first sign indicating Bonito was 30 kilometers away. We're almost there, she exclaimed, waking Lucas in the process. The boy rubbed his eyes and looked out the window, seeing the dense forest on both sides of the road. Are we there yet? Almost, Marina replied. Another half an hour. Roberto passed an electronic speed trap and automatically reduced his speed. He was used to these on the interior roads, always placed near small villages or areas with pedestrian traffic. This one seemed to be in the middle of nowhere, but he knew there must be a farm or community nearby. Lucas picked up his disposable camera and checked again how many photos were left. Dad, when we get to the Bonito sign, will you stop the car so I can take a picture of the family? Roberto smiled in the rearview mirror. Of course, Roberto announced. We'll stop for the official trip photo. Carla immediately began to orchestrate the shot in her mind. Where would everyone stand? Who would hold the camera if they wanted a group picture? The road swept into a long curve to the right and began a gentle ascent. Roberto could feel the engine working a little harder, but it was nothing to worry about. The sedan had more than enough power for the mountain roads. Marina lowered her window a few inches, letting the cooler, damp air sweep into the car. The air already feels different, she commented. Cleaner, fresher. At 11:15, they passed a small farm where a few cows grazed, sheltered from the drizzle under a makeshift cover. Lucas pointed toward them. Look, Dad. The cows are hiding from the rain just like us. Roberto chuckled. Animals are smart. They know how to take care of themselves. Carla made a mental note to include the observation in her school essay about the trip. The GPS showed another 20 minutes to Bonito. Roberto glanced at the fuel gauge. Still more than half a tank, plenty for getting around town and for the drive back the next day. Marina, in a habit that always calmed her before arriving at a new destination, straightened the documents in their plastic folder one last time. Everything was in order. Reservations confirmed, papers organized, family excited and healthy. The Welcome to Bonito Mato Grosso do Sul sign appeared, majestic at the town's entrance, its green and white colors standing out against the overcast sky. Roberto slowed and pulled over onto the shoulder, just as he had promised Lucas. We've arrived in the ecotourism paradise, he said, switching off the engine. The rain had paused, as if nature itself wanted to cooperate with their family portrait. Lucas was the first one out, disposable camera in hand, eager to capture their official arrival. Carla fluffed her hair using the car's side mirror and made sure her white t-shirt was straight. Marina stepped out more slowly, stretching her legs after the nearly 5-hour journey. Roberto locked the car and stood beside his wife, everyone lining up in front of the silver sedan with the welcome sign as their backdrop. Maybe we can get a picture of all of us together? Marina asked, looking around. The road was quiet, but soon a pickup truck carrying another tourist couple pulled over to photograph the sign. The man, seeing their predicament, offered a friendly smile. Want me to take it for you? That would be great. Where are you folks from? Roberto asked. Campo Grande, the man replied as he took the camera. First time in Bonito? It is. You're going to love it. The place is spectacular. The photo was taken with everyone smiling naturally. Roberto and Marina in the center, Carla and Lucas on either side. The click of the disposable camera captured a moment of pure family joy. The anticipation of 3 days of discovery and adventure in one of Brazil's most beautiful regions. Lucas immediately wanted to see the result, but he'd have to wait until the photos were developed at the end of the trip. Back in the car, Roberto checked his phone and saw he had a strong signal. "I'll call the guest house to let them know we've arrived." The call was answered quickly by the same woman's voice from before. "Hi, this is Roberto Silva. We've just arrived in Bonito." "Wonderful. The guest house is on the main street, number 347. Look for a green sign out front. Your room is ready." Marina tucked the plastic folder into the glove compartment and adjusted her purse. "What time do you all want to have lunch?" Roberto asked. "How about 12:30? Marina suggested. Carla and Lucas agreed. They were hungry from the trip but also wanted to shower and freshen up before eating. "Perfect. That gives us time to rest a bit before the grotto tour at 2. The sedan entered the town slowly, Roberto taking in the sights of the main streets. Bonito had the typical charm of a small inland tourist town: organized streets, shops catering to visitors, and signs pointing to guest houses, restaurants, and tour agencies. "It's smaller than I imagined," Carla commented. "But it seems very well organized," Marina added. The guest house was easy to find, a single-story building with a white-painted facade and wood accents, surrounded by a small garden of native plants. The green sign out front confirmed the address. Roberto parked in a spot reserved for guests and turned off the engine. "Welcome to our home for the next 3 days," he said with a smile. The receptionist was a young woman with dark hair and a warm local accent. "The Silva family, welcome." She checked their documents quickly and handed over the room keys. "You're in room 6, right at the end of the hall. It's one of our family rooms with 2 double beds. Breakfast is served from 7 to 10 and lunch is available until 2. Lucas was eager to see the room, but first Roberto wanted to confirm the details of their afternoon tour. "Our reservation for the Blue Lake Grotto is for 2 o'clock, correct?" The receptionist checked a ledger. "Yes, that's confirmed. The agency's van will pick you up here at 1:40. The tour lasts about 2 hours. The room was simple but comfortable, with air conditioning, a mini fridge, and a window overlooking the small garden. Lucas immediately tested one of the beds, bouncing gently on the mattress. "Comfortable," he approved. Carla placed her small backpack on the other bed and went to the window to watch the street. Marina opened the plastic folder yet again, laying out the day's vouchers. "Blue Lake Grotto today, snorkeling in the Sucuri River tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon is free for us to explore the town." Roberto hung their clothes in the small wardrobe and checked that there were enough towels in the bathroom. "Everything's in order. I'm going to take a quick shower before lunch," Marina said. "Me too," Carla added. Lucas was busy fiddling with the disposable camera, calculating how many photos he had left before he'd need to buy a new one. Roberto lay down on the bed for a few minutes, pleased with their smooth journey and Marina's perfect planning. At 12:30 sharp, they went down to the guest house restaurant. The smell of home-cooked food, rice, beans, roasted meat, and sautéed vegetables stirred everyone's appetite. The table was served generously and the conversation revolved around their expectations for the Blue Lake Grotto tour. "I'm going to take so many pictures," Lucas promised. "And I'm going to pay attention to every detail for my journal," said Carla. At 1:40 in the afternoon, the white tour agency van pulled up in front of the guest house, right on time. Roberto checked that everyone had their IDs and the disposable camera. Marina tucked the plastic folder into her bag, keeping the vouchers organized and easily accessible. Carla carried a small backpack with water and her notebook. Lucas clutched his camera, ready to photograph everything. The van driver, a man in his 40s wearing an agency t-shirt, got out to greet them. "Silva family, I'm Marcelo. I'll be your guide at the grotto today. Everyone ready?" Roberto confirmed and helped Marina into the van. There were other tourists already inside, an elderly couple from Sao Paulo and a family with 2 teenagers from Rio Grande do Sul. "First time at the Blue Lake Grotto?" Marcelo asked as he drove through Bonito toward the attraction. "First time in Bonito, period," Marina replied. "Then you're going to fall in love," he said. "The grotto is one of the 7 wonders of the subterranean world. The water has a unique blue color because of the dissolved minerals and the way sunlight enters the cave." Lucas asked the first technical question. "Why is the water blue?" Marcelo smiled, used to the visitor's curiosity. "It's a combination of factors. The water is rich in dissolved calcium carbonate, which comes from the limestone rock. When sunlight enters through the grotto's opening, it refracts in the water in a special way, creating that transparent blue you're about to see." The road to the grotto led out of town and continued for about 15 kilometers through farmland and preserved forest. Carla watched the landscape from the window, noticing how different the vegetation was from the savanna of Campo Grande. "There's so much more water here," she remarked. "Exactly," Marcelo confirmed. "We're in an aquifer region. Lots of springs, underground rivers, caves. That's why the water is so clean and clear." The couple from Sao Paulo asked about the water temperature in the grotto. "It's always between 22 and 24 degrees Celsius, Marcelo explained. "The temperature inside is constant all year round. In the winter, like now, the water feels warm. In the summer, it feels cooler." Marina was relieved. She had been worried they might need special clothing for the tour. They arrived at the Blue Lake Grotto parking lot at 2:15. It was a large area with restrooms, a snack bar, and a small souvenir shop. Roberto paid the entrance fee at the ticket counter while Marina made sure everyone had appropriate shoes for the walk inside the cave. Lucas was already taking pictures of the surroundings. "Before we go down, a few important instructions," Marcelo said, gathering the group. "The descent has 180 steps. It's not difficult, but you need to be careful as it can be damp. Inside, you cannot touch the water or the rock formations. This is a natural heritage site that must be preserved." Carla mentally noted all the instructions. The entrance to the grotto was a natural opening in the rock, flanked by lush vegetation. An attendant checked their tickets and wished the group a good visit. "Your first time in the grotto is always unforgettable," he said, smiling at Lucas, who was clearly the most excited of the group. The descent began on a well-structured path with wooden handrails and even steps. Roberto walked slowly, keeping a watchful eye on Marina, who was a little wary of heights. Carla followed close behind, fascinated by the rock formations that were beginning to appear on the cave walls. Lucas tried to photograph everything, but the light wasn't quite right yet. "Wait until you get to the bottom," Marcelo advised. "That's where the magic happens. When you see the Blue Lake for the first time, you'll understand why this place is so special." The group continued their descent, the air growing cooler and more humid with every step. The sound of their footsteps echoed softly off the cave walls. After another 50 steps, they began to hear the soft, gentle sound of water. "We're getting close," Marcelo announced. "Prepare yourselves for something unique." Marina held Roberto's hand, a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Carla checked that her notebook was secure in her backpack. She wanted to write down every detail of this experience. The natural light began to filter in differently, casting golden and blue reflections on the damp cave walls. Lucas stopped taking pictures and simply watched, mesmerized by the gradual change in the atmosphere. "Dad, everything is turning blue," he murmured. Roberto nodded, equally impressed by the transformation of the light as they descended. 180 steps later, they arrived at the observation deck overlooking the subterranean lake. The group's silence was instantaneous. Marina brought a hand to her chest, speechless at the most breathtaking sight she had ever witnessed. The water was an impossible shade of transparent blue, so crystalline it seemed you could touch the bottom meters below. Sunlight streamed through the upper opening, transforming into a golden beam that danced on the lake's surface. Lucas raised his disposable camera but stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to process the beauty before him. "Dad, is this real?" he whispered. Roberto placed a hand on his son's shoulder, equally in awe. "It's real, son, and it's spectacular." Carla moved closer to the protective railing, watching the fish that swam gracefully in the clear water, their movements creating gentle ripples on the blue surface. "The lake is 72 meters deep," Marcelo explained, respecting the group's moment of contemplation. "Visibility reaches up to 50 meters. Those fish you see are dorado, piao, and piapara. Some have lived here for decades." Marina finally found her voice. "How can nature create something like this?" Marcelo pointed to the cave walls where stalactites and stalagmites formed thousand-year-old natural sculptures. All of this was carved by water over millions of years. Every drop that falls from the ceiling carries minerals that deposit and create these formations. The lake exists because there's an underground river below that constantly replenishes this natural pool. Lucas finally began to take pictures, but sparingly, knowing that each click of the disposable camera was precious. First shot, the blue lake with the golden light reflecting on its surface. Second shot, the family gathered on the observation deck. Third shot, the rock formations on the grotto's ceiling. Carla jotted everything down in her notebook. Transparent blue water, enormous golden fish, magical natural light. Roberto noticed there were other observation platforms at different levels. "Can we go down further?" he asked Marcelo. "There is a second platform closer to the water, but it's temporarily closed for maintenance today. It's a matter of safety." Marina was relieved. She was already overwhelmed enough by the view from above. The group remained on the main platform for about 30 minutes. The couple from Sao Paulo asked about the region's geological formation, while the family from the south tried to identify all the visible fish species. Lucas continued to shoot carefully, alternating between landscapes and family photos. "Mom, stand there by the railing. I want a picture of you with the lake in the background." Carla noticed grotto staff working in restricted areas, carrying maintenance equipment through passages not open to the public. "Marcelo, how many people work here?" she asked. "We have a team of about 15 people. Guides, ticket office staff, maintenance, security. You have to take very good care of this place to preserve it for future generations." Marina asked about the opening hours. "We open at 8 a.m. and close at 5 p.m. After that, the grotto is completely seen. It is a time when the fish are most active, when the temperature settles and nature follows its undisturbed course." Roberto imagined what this place must be like, in the absolute silence of the night, with only the moonlight filtering through the opening above. Marcelo began to guide the group for the ascent. "All right, everyone, let's start heading back," he announced. "The climb up is more strenuous than the way down, so we'll take it slow." Lucas asked to take one last photo. The whole family gathered together with the blue lake in the background. "This will be our official Blue Lake Grotto picture," he said, positioning everyone for the best angle. The ascent up the 180 steps was slow and tiring. Roberto helped Marina on the steepest sections, while Carla and Lucas forged ahead, still buzzing with excitement over everything they had seen. "I'll never forget that blue color," Carla said. "And those huge fish. Lucas added. At 4:15 in the afternoon, they emerged from the grotto into the natural daylight. The contrast was striking. After the blue twilight of the cave, the sunlight seemed especially brilliant. Marina bought a postcard at the little souvenir shop, while Roberto checked the prices of local products. Sweets made from peaky fruit, wooden handicrafts, t-shirts with images of the grotto. In the parking lot, while they waited for the van to the inn, Lucas counted the remaining shots on his disposable camera. Only 3 photos left. I'll save them for the river float tomorrow. Look, Mom, Carla said, showing Marina her notebook. I wrote everything down. I won't forget a single detail. The van arrived at 4:30, with Marcelo greeting the group, who were clearly enchanted by the tour. So, how was the experience? He asked. Unforgettable, Marina replied. It surpassed all our expectations, Roberto added. During the drive back to Bonito, the group exchanged impressions, each person highlighting the moment that had impressed them the most. They arrived at the inn at 5 o'clock. Roberto thanked Marcelo for his guidance and gave him a tip for his excellent work as a guide. Tomorrow we have the snorkeling trip on the Sucuri River, Marina said. It will be different but just as beautiful, Marcelo assured them. You'll love swimming with the fish. Back in their room at the inn, the family rested after the thrill of the Blue Lake Grotto. Marina organized the vouchers for the next day, while Roberto lay on the bed, still processing the profound beauty of what they had witnessed. I never imagined a place like this existed in Brazil, he commented. Lucas flipped through his notebook, rereading everything he had written about the grotto. Carla was in the bathroom, washing her face and fixing her hair for dinner. At 6 in the evening, they went down to the inn's restaurant. The table was set with typical regional food, baked pacu fish, banana farofa, arroz carretero, and a pequi vinaigrette. Conversation during dinner revolved entirely around the day's experiences. That blue of the water was just unreal, Marina said. And the size of those fish, Lucas exclaimed, using his hands to show the immense size of the dorados he had seen. Roberto asked about the other guests at the inn. Are there many people from outside Mato Grosso do Sul? He asked the receptionist who was serving their dinner. Quite a few. We have people from all over Brazil. Bonito has really become a national destination, especially during holidays and school vacations. Carla felt a little special, knowing she was visiting a place that people from all over the country wanted to see. After dinner, they walked through the center of Bonito. The streets were bustling with tourists, restaurants were open, and craft shops were doing business late into the evening. Lucas wanted to buy a souvenir with the money he had saved, but he decided to wait until their last day to choose more carefully. Marina bought postcards of various regional attractions to send to her sisters in Campo Grande. Roberto stopped at a tour agency to confirm the details for the next day's snorkeling trip. Departure at 8 in the morning, with an expected return around noon, the attendant confirmed. Masks, snorkels, and life vests are all included. You just need to bring sunscreen and a towel. Marina made a mental note of the list so she wouldn't forget anything. Carla was fascinated by the number of tour agencies in the town. Dad, how many different activities are there in Bonito? Roberto counted at least 10 different agencies on the main street alone. Grottos, rivers for snorkeling, waterfalls. The call lasted almost half an hour, with Marina describing every detail of the experience. Roberto checked the weather forecast on a local radio station. Should be sunny tomorrow morning with a chance of rain in the afternoon. Perfect for the float, he said. Lucas was already excited to swim with the fish, while Carla worried if she would be able to use the snorkel mask correctly. It's easy, Roberto reassured her. You'll get the hang of it. Before bed, Marina organized their clothes for the next day. swimsuits, a shirt for sun protection, comfortable shorts, and sneakers that could get wet. Roberto set aside the sunscreen and checked that everyone had a proper towel. Lucas carefully placed the disposable camera on his bedside table, looking forward to using his last 3 photos. Carla wrote in her diary before falling asleep. First day in Bonito was perfect. The Blue Lake Grotto is truly magical. I've never seen water so blue and clear. The fish are huge and swim right near you. Tomorrow we're snorkeling in the Sucuri River. I'm excited and a little nervous. I wonder if I'll be able to breathe properly with the mask. Roberto turned off the light at 10 o'clock. We have to wake up early tomorrow to make the most of the trip, he said. Marina agreed, but she lay awake for a few more minutes, replaying the images of the blue lake. How can nature create something so perfect, she thought, still in awe of the day's experience. Lucas fell asleep thinking of the golden fish swimming in the grotto's crystalline waters. Roberto drifted off quickly, satisfied with how perfectly the trip was going. Marina was the last to fall asleep, mentally planning how she would describe it all to her friends when they returned to Campo Grande. The room fell silent, filled only with the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional sound of voices from neighboring rooms. Outside, Bonito was also settling down for the night, as the last restaurant lights went out and the streets grew quiet. It was a peaceful Monday in July in a tourist town that would wake tomorrow to welcome new visitors, including the Silva family who were living their dream vacation. At 7 on Tuesday morning, Roberto was the first to wake, as usual. He opened the curtains and saw that the day was sunny with just a few clouds in the sky, perfect for snorkeling in the Sucuri River. Marina was still sleeping soundly, tired from the previous day's excitement. Lucas and Carla began to stir in their beds when they heard Roberto in the bathroom. Breakfast at the inn was plentiful: fresh bread, regional fruits, cheeses, ham, strong coffee, and peaky juice. Lucas tried the juice for the first time and made a face. The flavor was very different from what he was used to. It's an acquired taste, the receptionist laughed. People who are born here grow up drinking peaky juice. Carla opted for the more familiar orange juice. Marina double-checked the snorkeling vouchers. Departure at 8, arrival at the Sucuri River at 8:30. The activity would begin at 9 o'clock sharp. Roberto made sure everyone was wearing appropriate clothing for the water. The guide said the water is warm, but it's a good idea to wear a shirt over your swimsuit for sun protection. The van arrived promptly at 8. The driver, a different young man from the day before, introduced himself as João, explaining that he would be both their driver and their snorkeling guide. First time on the Sucuri River? He asked. First time in Bonito, Marina replied. Then you're in for a surprise. The Sucuri is considered one of the most crystal-clear rivers in the world. There were other tourists in the van, 2 families from Goiás and a young couple from São Paulo on their honeymoon. Lucas immediately struck up a conversation with the other teenagers, comparing travel experiences. Carla remained more reserved, observing the rural landscape that surrounded the town. The journey to the Sucuri River took about 15 minutes, passing cattle farms and areas of preserved forest. The Sucuri's source is a crystalline spring just a few kilometers from here, João explained. The temperature is a constant 22 degrees Celsius, with visibility up to 40 meters deep. It's like floating in a giant natural aquarium. They arrived at the river's support base at 8:30. It was a simple but well-organized facility with changing rooms, showers, an area for storing belongings, and a small snack bar. Roberto paid the additional fees while Marina organized the towels and sunscreen. Lucas was eager to get his snorkel mask and test it out. João gathered the group for a briefing. The float lasts about 50 minutes. We'll go down the river for approximately 1,800 meters. The current is gentle, so there's no need to worry. You'll see fish, aquatic plants, and rock formations on the riverbed. Carla paid close attention to every detail. The equipment was distributed quickly and efficiently, a mask, snorkel, and life vest for each person. João helped Lucas adjust his mask correctly. It needs to seal well around your eyes, but without being too tight. If water gets in, just lift your head and empty it out. Marina tried on her vest and felt more secure. Roberto tested his snorkel in the training pool at the base. The water was warm and clear, a preview of what they would find in the river. "It's easier than I thought," he said to Marina, who was still a bit apprehensive. "You just breathe normally through the tube. It's okay if you swallow a little water." Carla asked João a few technical questions. "How does the water stay so transparent?" "It's a combination of factors. The spring is very deep, the water passes through natural limestone filters, and the riverside vegetation protects the river from sediment. The result is incredible visibility." She mentally noted the explanation to include in her diary. Lucas took the second-to-last photo on his disposable camera. The whole family geared up with masks, snorkels, and vests ready to enter the Sucuri River. "Only one photo left," he said. "I'm saving it for something really special." Marina suggested he save it to photograph an interesting fish during the float. At 9 o'clock sharp, they walked to the riverbank. The first sight was breathtaking. The water was so clear you could see the bottom in perfect detail. Aquatic plants swayed gently with the current. Small fish swam near the banks. "It's even more beautiful than the grotto," Marina murmured. João was the first to get in, demonstrating the correct floating technique. "Let your bodies relax. The vest will support you. Put your face in the water and breathe calmly through the snorkel. It's like flying over an underwater world." Roberto was the first of the family to enter, followed by Marina, Carla, and finally Lucas. The sensation of floating in the Sucuri River surpassed all of the family's expectations. Roberto, who had entered first, was immediately captivated by the water's perfect visibility. He could see every stone on the bottom, every aquatic plant swaying in the gentle current, every fish swimming peacefully beneath them. "Marina, you have to see this," he called, helping his wife get positioned correctly in the water. It took Marina a few minutes to get used to the mask and snorkel, but when she finally put her face in the water, she couldn't contain a muffled gasp of admiration. Hundreds of fish were swimming just below her. Dorados, pios, curimbatas, and species she couldn't name. "It's like being inside a giant aquarium," she said as soon as she lifted her head. Carla had an easier time with the equipment and was soon floating comfortably, observing the aquatic plants that covered parts of the riverbed. They were an intense green, swaying hypnotically with the current. Occasionally, small fish would hide among the plants, playing a game of hide-and-seek that fascinated her. Lucas adapted to the float the most quickly. With the typical energy of a 12-year-old, he swam from one side of the river to the other, following schools of small fish and trying to get closer to the underwater rock formations. João had to remind him a few times not to stray too far from the group and to follow the natural pace of the current. The journey down the river was a unique experience. The current was so gentle that the movement was barely perceptible, giving the impression that they were floating in a giant lake. New surprises appeared around every bend: submerged tree trunks covered in plants, small rocky caves where fish took shelter, and deeper areas where the water took on a more intense blue hue. João pointed to a group of large dorados swimming calmly in the middle of the river. "Those are the kings of this river," he said. "Some of them weigh over 10 kilos. They've been here for years, protected by the region's environmental preservation efforts." Lucas immediately wanted to get closer, but João advised him to keep his distance so as not to startle the fish. Marina discovered she could dive down a few feet to get a better look at the plants on the riverbed. The feeling of floating between two worlds, the one of air and the one of water, was indescribable. "I never thought I could do this," she told Roberto during a brief pause. "I feel like a mermaid." Roberto smiled, proud of his wife's courage. Carla was fascinated by the diversity of fish species. João identified each one that appeared. "Those small yellow ones are lambares, the larger silver ones are pieios, and those with black stripes are curimbatas." She tried to memorize all the names to include in her diary notes. About halfway through the journey, they reached a wider part of the river where the depth increased considerably. The water took on an even more intense shade of blue, and they could see impressive rock formations on the bottom. Lucas used the last shot on his disposable camera at that moment, capturing the family as they drifted over what looked like a submerged canyon. It dawned on Roberto that he was living one of the most special moments of his life. At 65, the discovery that he could still have completely new and breathtaking experiences was rejuvenating. He should have come to Bonito long ago, he thought, watching Marina float gracefully beside him. The final leg of the float brought the group to a shallower area where they could stand and observe the fish from a different perspective. Many fish approached them, seemingly accustomed to the presence of tourists. For a few seconds, Carla came face to face with a medium-sized dorado, an experience she would later describe as magical. "We're nearing the end of the route," João explained. "The exit point is just up ahead. Take these last few minutes to see anything you might have missed." Lucas dove one last time, trying to touch an aquatic plant, while Marina floated on her back, watching the blue sky through her partially submerged mask. At 10:15, they emerged from the water at the final landing point. Their faces were a mixture of satisfaction and a pleasant weariness. "How was it?" João asked. "Indescribable," Roberto answered. "So much better than we ever imagined," Marina added. Carla and Lucas were still processing everything they had seen, exchanging impressions about the fish and plants that had most captured their attention. After changing and shoring at the Rio Sucuri support base, the family returned to Bonito with a sense of mission accomplished. The day had been perfect. Sun, crystal clear water, abundant fish, and an experience that would remain in their memories forever. Roberto steered the conversation on the way back, remarking on the region's preserved beauty and how well-structured the ecological tourism was. Back at the inn, they had lunch, their appetites sharpened by the exercise in the water. Marina called her sister in Campo Grande again to tell her all about the float. "Now I understand why Bonito has become a world reference in ecotourism," she said during the call. "The nature here is preserved in a way that just doesn't exist in other places." In the afternoon, they had free time to explore the center of Bonito. They walked along the main streets, visited local craft shops, and bought a few souvenirs. Lucas finally chose his memento, a t-shirt with a print of the Blue Lake Grotto. Carla bought a keychain shaped like a dorado and a few more postcards. Roberto stopped at a travel agency to ask about other attractions in the area. "If you had more time, I'd recommend the Blue Grotto, the Anhumas Abyss, and the Rio do Peixe waterfall," the attendant suggested. "Bonito has enough activities for a whole week." Marina made a mental note of the suggestions for a future visit. In the late afternoon, they sat at a cafe in the central square for a snack, watching the town's rhythm. Bonito moved at its own pace. Tourists were constantly arriving and departing, yet there was always an air of tranquility typical of the countryside. "This would be a nice place to live," Carla commented. "Peaceful, beautiful, with nature all around." Marina organized the vouchers and documents in her plastic folder, checking that everything was in order for the return trip the next day. "We'll leave after breakfast tomorrow," she planned. We should get to Campo Grande around lunchtime. Roberto agreed with the schedule. They wanted to avoid the capital's heavier traffic. That evening, they dined at a restaurant recommended by the inn, trying regional dishes: pacu pintado, banana farofa, arroz carretero, and a picky dessert. The dinner conversation was a retrospective of their 2 days in Bonito, with each person highlighting their most memorable moments. Lucas declared that the most impressive part for him was seeing the large dorados during the float. "I never imagined there were fish that big in Brazilian rivers," he said. Carla chose her first glimpse of the blue lake in the grotto as her favorite moment. That blue color of the water was impossible to believe. Marina and Roberto agreed that the entire experience had surpassed their expectations. "We've discovered that Brazil has places just as beautiful as any international destination," Roberto reflected. "And it's right here, close to home in Mato Grosso do Sul," Marina added. "We'll definitely be back, maybe next year with more time." They returned to the inn at 9 o'clock. Marina packed their bags with her usual precision, separating the clean clothes from the laundry and carefully stowing away the souvenirs. Roberto double-checked that they hadn't left anything behind on their tours: documents, camera, sunglasses, phone charger. Carla wrote a long entry in her diary about the float on the Rio Sucuri. "The water was so clear it felt like we were flying over the riverbed. The fish swam right up to us without any fear. The aquatic plants swayed as if in an underwater dance. It was magical." Lucas flipped through a comic book, but his mind was still filled with images of the golden fish. Roberto turned on a local radio station to check the weather forecast for the next day. Wednesday. Sun in the morning with a chance of afternoon showers. Temperatures between 18 and 26 degrees Celsius. Perfect for a smooth drive back to Campo Grande. Before falling asleep, Marina did a mental review of the trip. Everything had gone according to plan. Reservations confirmed, tours completed without a hitch, the family united and happy, unforgettable experiences shared together. This was one of the best trips of our lives, she thought, satisfied with the organization that had resulted in a perfect experience. Their last night in Bonito was peaceful. The air conditioning kept the room at a comfortable temperature, and the pleasant exhaustion from days of outdoor activity ensured everyone slept soundly. Outside, the tourist town was preparing for another day of welcoming visitors from all over the world, but the Silva family had already lived their complete experience in the paradise of ecotourism. Part 11. Wednesday, July 17th, 2007. Roberto woke at 6:30 in the morning and opened the curtains to check the weather. The sky was clear with a few sparse clouds on the horizon. A good day for the drive back to Campo Grande. Marina was still asleep but soon stirred as the light filled the room. Lucas and Carla woke up almost simultaneously, still feeling the pleasant weariness of the previous days. Breakfast at the inn was more leisurely than usual. It was their last moment in Bonito, and no one wanted it to end. Roberto chatted with other guests about their experiences in the town. A couple from Cuiabá recommended the Blue Grotto for a future visit. Marina noted the suggestion in her plastic folder, along with the other used vouchers. At 8:30, they checked out. The receptionist asked how their stay had been. "Perfect," Marina replied. "Excellent inn, wonderful town, unforgettable experiences." Roberto left a tip for the housekeeping staff and thanked them for their hospitality. Lucas took one last mental picture of the inn's garden, where he had spent 3 happy days. The silver sedan was loaded with luggage and the souvenirs they had bought. Roberto checked the fuel. He still had more than half a tank, enough to reach Campo Grande with plenty to spare. Marina organized the plastic folder in the glove compartment, a habit of keeping everything in order, even after it was used. They left Bonito at 9 o'clock sharp. Roberto made a point of driving past the town's welcome arch again, this time bidding farewell to the place that had given his family such unique moments. Carla waved out the window as if saying goodbye to old friends. Lucas watched the landscape that would soon give way to the Cerrado again. The road was quiet for a Wednesday morning. Roberto maintained a steady speed, unhurried, taking the opportunity to talk with his family about the most memorable parts of the trip. "What are you going to tell your friends about first?" he asked. Lucas said he would tell them about the giant fish from the float. Carla talked about the impossible blue of the grotto. Marina tuned the radio to a local station playing sertanejo music, interspersed with information about regional events. "The Bonito Winter Festival begins next week," the announcer said, "with concerts, traditional cuisine, and craft fairs." Marina commented that it would be interesting to come back during the festival next year. They passed through Guia Lopez da Laguna at 10:15 a.m. The town seemed busier than on their way in. A few cargo trucks, workers in the streets, shops open. Roberto again greeted the highway patrol officer who was in the same spot as on Monday. "The people here are very friendly," he remarked. Lucas was getting sleepy in the back seat, lulled by the steady rhythm of the road and the low music from the radio. The sky, however, was beginning to change. From the clear midday light, more compact clouds were forming in the distance, heralding isolated showers for the early afternoon. Roberto kept his speed at 90 kilometers per hour, mindful of the signs and speed cameras that often appeared without warning near rural access roads. "Not far to Sidrolandia now," he said, more to himself than to anyone else, as a corn truck slowly overtook them on a gentle incline. Marina glanced at the plastic folder in the glove compartment. To her, everything inside was an organized memory of those days. The stamped vouchers, the agency receipts, 2 postcards she still intended to write when she got back. She closed it slowly. She felt a slight weight of departure. It was always like this when a good trip ended. Around 10:40, the first heavy drops began to spatter the windshield. Roberto switched the wipers to intermittent mode. The asphalt, dry until then, began to gleam darkly. Along the sides of the MS-178, shallow ditches started to channel muddy water toward the drainage culverts. "Dad, can I lie down for a bit?" Lucas asked, still drowsy. "You can, but keep the seatbelt over you," he replied, slightly adjusting the air conditioning to clear the fog from the glass. Carla, with her diary on her lap, jotted down scattered words. Blue water, golden fish, silence in the cave, a good chill. From time to time, she rested her head against the window. Following the irregular pattern of the wire fences beside the road, at 11:02 the radio signal crackled. The music vanished for a few seconds, replaced by static. Marina tried to tune to another local frequency. She only half succeeded. The announcer reported isolated rain in the Guia Lopez region, with possible gusts of wind. Nothing unusual for July, but enough for Roberto to double his focus. It was then that they saw, on the right side of the road, a gravel pull-off, the kind made for brief stops. A dark car was already parked at the near end of it, hood up. A man in a cap was on his cell phone looking at the engine. Roberto slowed down. He assessed whether he needed to swerve. The pull-off was wide. He continued on. He only saw the man's arm raise in a sort of wait gesture to the vehicle behind them. A trivial detail on the road, nothing to hold one's attention for more than a few seconds. "If the rain gets heavier, we'll stop for lunch in Sidrolandia," Marina suggested. "Sounds good. If the traffic is light, we'll still get there early," Roberto replied. The rain followed them for many kilometers, sometimes light, sometimes a downpour. Between 11:20 and 11:40, visibility dropped in certain stretches. and Roberto chose to keep a wide distance from the corn truck that had retaken the lead. It was during this interval that later, one of the official timelines would mark a zone of uncertainty. Few passages were recorded by highway cameras. Radio frequency was irregular, and no card transactions were made that could pinpoint the silver sedan's position for about 30 minutes. At 11:47, the wipers were working at full speed. The water formed veils across the glass. The wind, however, helped clear the windshield with each gust, and Roberto, an experienced driver, continued without incident. Lucas fell asleep. Carla closed her diary. Marina, out of reflex, checked the contents of her purse and rested her hand on the glove compartment, the automatic gesture of someone confirming what they already know is there. The next stretch of road, they would later say, was a straight shot with no surprises. Few side roads, transitional vegetation with patches of gallery forest, and two small bridges over drainage channels. The water at the foot of the guardrails ran with a quiet force. No flooding, just the culverts doing their job. It was near noon that a white pickup truck, coming from the opposite direction, claimed to have seen a silver sedan stopped at a pull-off between Guia Lopez and Bonito. The witness, a salesman on his way to a delivery, said he noticed a gray-haired man outside the car facing the trunk. "It was quick. I just glanced over and he was gone." The description, collected days later, was ultimately classified as an inconclusive report. Possible time, plausible location, imprecise details, no license plate, no photo. What came next in the official records was silence. No lunch purchase registered on Roberto's card, no completed calls from Marina's cell phone after 11:12, when she, trying to let her sister-in-law know they would arrive in the early afternoon, heard only a dead tone and gave up. The two devices roamed between different cell towers, never connecting long enough for a reliable triangulation. At 12:09, they went silent, seconds apart. When they didn't arrive in Campo Grande at the expected time, the family called the inn in Bonito, assuming they might have forgotten a document. The reception desk confirmed their 8:30 a.m. checkout and that their car had left the parking spot at 9 o'clock. Then came the familiar sequence. Unanswered calls, a trip to the highway patrol, a missing persons report filed, state and federal highway police, firefighters and volunteers swept the roadsides, culverts, bridges, canals, and rural access roads. There were no skid marks, no sign of a collision, no shattered bumper. In the deeper channels, divers probed suspicious metallic shapes, old car frames, abandoned drums, scrap metal, but nothing of the sedan. A week passed, then a month. Posters appeared in local bakeries and gas stations. Missing, a family from Campo Grande. The case earned a few lines in the local press, and then, after the initial shock faded, it sank into the tepid chronology of unanswered files. All that remained were toll booth stubs, a hotel checkout confirmation, plausible transit times, and two silent cell phones. And above all, the lingering question of where and when what was once solid had simply vanished into silence. 5 years passed. Then, in 2012, the rain, the very same rain they had driven through in sheets that July, returned with a vengeance, forcing drainage work and internal inspections in the technical area of a walkway near the entrance to the Blue Lake Grotto. It was a forgotten spot, closed to the public, where limestone water trickled in milky rivulets and where routine was imposed only on maintenance days. There, a displaced metal maintenance grate revealed a hidden recess, and inside it, the weight of 4 very old blue barrels, which no one remembered placing there. Suddenly, the story had resurfaced. Part 12. Discovery, forensics, reconstruction, and reopening. The maintenance team knew the protocol by heart. Find something out of place, isolate, do not touch, report. At 10:12 on that morning of inspection, the foreman photographed the scene with his cell phone. The displaced grate, the milky puddles of limestone water on the floor, and, most importantly, the unusual assembly. 4 old blue barrels chained together, anchored to the ground by metal weights. More chains were crossed over their lids, secured with oxidized padlocks. Dark red stains, long since dried, ran down from their upper rims. They were not recent. They seemed part of the scenery except for one fact. They appeared on no inventory list. Management called the civil police and the forensics unit. The first step was to widen the cordoned-off area. Police tape, 360-degree photographic records, collection of water samples and scrapings from the crusts that had fused segments of the chain to the floor. The scene had a rare peculiarity, from long exposure to the mineral-rich trickles seeping from the limestone walls. The lids and chains were coated in calcite crusts, a physical testament to their long-term presence. Longer than weeks, longer than months. In their reports, the forensic experts repeated technical terms and procedural cautions. They mapped old footprints in dry zones, collected partial prints from the weights and a metal sleeper next to the grate. They gathered stray textile fibers from a recess that looked as if it had been used for leverage. In an adjacent area behind the grate, in a pocket of higher ground protected from the direct flow of water, one object stood out, a translucent plastic folder. Inside, damp papers with letters that still resisted the decay. Vouchers from 2007, partially legible. And at the bottom, the swollen casing of a damaged disposable camera. It was the folder that broke the aridity of the technical reports. Among the receipts and confirmations, a single-lined sheet of paper showed blurred notes in a youthful hand. Grotto. Take lots of photos floating. Don't forget sunscreen. Buy souvenirs for my friends. It was a flash of humanity amid the cold procedure. It was enough for the team to redouble its focus on the chain of custody. The folder was sealed in an appropriate container and sent to a lab for controlled drying. Meanwhile, investigators opened a parallel inquiry. Maintenance schedules from 2007, 2008, and 2012. A map of keys and internal access points. A list of former employees and contractors. Construction contracts. The discovery site was in a technical area under a walkway, away from the tourist path, with side access through a service door that opened onto the internal parking lot. On a normal day, it was discreet. On a rainy night, it would be unnoticeable. The hypothesis that emerged was not sensational, but methodical. Taking advantage of a rainy pre-dawn between 2 and 4 in the morning, when the sound of water would mask any noise and foot traffic was non-existent. Someone with knowledge of the site would have used the service door to enter. They would have moved the maintenance grate and, in a low, hidden spot, anchored the containers. Interlocking chains, metal weights on the floor. Padlocks, perhaps 2 individuals judging by the arrangement of the objects. The calcite crusts that had welded the links and bases suggested they had been in the same position for years. The dark red stains on the lids looked old with no sheen, and gave off no active odor upon initial inspection. Samples were sent for lab analysis with no premature conclusions released to the public. Investigators then aligned the 2007 rain calendar with the employee shift schedules, a patient cross-referencing of timesheets, receipts for small purchases at the canteen, and entry and exit logs at the main gate. The goal was to narrow down a credible operational window for the act. At the same time, teams revisited 5 years later stretches of riverside forest, drainage ditches, and ravines along the route between Bonito and Campo Grande, searching for any trace of the sedan that was never found. The disposable camera recovered by specialists was a long shot. The emulsion was water damaged, but after a slow drying process and experimental digitization, fragments of 4 frames were partially recovered. At best, they showed smudges of blue and backlight in a cavernous environment. It was impossible to publicly state if they were from the Blue Lake Grotto. The official report, cautious, spoke only of partial compatibility with a limestone cavity environment. What truly carried weight was the totality of the evidence. The folder of vouchers from 2007, the location of the discovery, the long-term presence suggested by the calcification, and the methodical anchoring. With this, the inquiry, which had long been dormant, was formally reopened. The external line of investigation began to focus on who had access to keys and internal routes at the time. The internal line revisited every rainy pre-dawn during that winter of 2007 and the months that followed. The inconclusive report of the sedan stopped on the shoulder between Guia Lopez and Bonito was kept in the case file. It neither proved nor disproved anything, but it defined a temporal corridor. Reconstructed without dramatic flair, the plausible sequence of events was laid out, cold and didactic, as befits a case that had been nothing but silence for 5 years. A rainy pre-dawn between 2 and 4 a.m. Side access via a service door with a compatible key. Displacement of a maintenance grate to create a niche. Positioning and chaining of 4 barrels, anchoring with weights to the floor. The grate returned but partially out of place, leaving the assembly hidden from casual view. An exit through the same door, shielded by the noise of the rain and the absence of people. There was no great revelation, no hero, no comforting epilogue. There was only the painstaking work of ants, cross-referencing spreadsheets, reconstructing shift schedules, tracking down names of people who no longer lived in the city, finding discrete contradictions in 2 old testimonies that were now seen in a new light. There was a court order to retrieve cell tower data from 2007, a difficult task, given the precarious data storage of the era, and a map of internal security blind spots from that winter. The video, as promised from the start, ends where reality allows. At the reconstructed technical window, with the explanation of the method that makes the discovery plausible, and with the administrative act that reopens the inquiry. 5 years later, when 4 very old blue barrels emerge, it doesn't provide the smoking gun. It emerges not from a brilliant deduction, but from the forgotten corner of a corridor under a walkway. It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't close wounds with words. It simply brings back what the rain, the calcite, and time had tried to bury. And it leaves on the table the faded sheet of notebook paper. Grotto, take lots of photos, floating. Don't forget sunscreen. Buy souvenirs for my friends. A list that now serves less as a reminder of plans made and more as a solemn vow not to forget, because this case cannot be allowed to fade into silence again.